Now, the National Road Safety Authority has been established by Act 993 in 2019 to replace the National Road Safety Commission as the lead public agency for road safety improvement in Ghana. The authority is mandated to develop, promote, coordinate, and regulate activities, procedures, and standards related to road safety. How different is the authority from the Commission, and what is the new agenda for road safety improvement? We have a representative from the National Road Safety Authority to help us reflect on the new mandate, new agenda, new expectations of the authority, and how the new agenda helps to address the challenges we have with road accidents and related problems. Don't forget, we are premiering our documentary Crashed Young at 4 p.m. today in Kumasi. And so Head of Regulations, Inspection and Compliance at the National Road Safety Authority, Mr. Kwame Atuahene himself, is here. Good to see you.
You are, sir.
So what has changed from commission to authority? What's your new mandate?
Well, thanks a lot. Beyond the change in name, there's a change in expectation. When we were a commission, our prime objective was to promote road safety, raise the issues of the risk associated with crashes, increase public awareness, with a view that the public will be informed and make appropriate choices. Becoming an authority, the law sets out a clear objective for us, which is that beyond advocacy and improvement in knowledge, the expectation from the law or legal standpoint is for us to reduce the incident of crashes and the associated deaths and injuries. So in the past, we're going to be measured by the extent to which the public have become aware of these factors. And indeed, if you go back to look at the indicators today, the level of awareness have gone up from less than 40% in 2006 to about 85% in 2019. It means a lot have been achieved in that regard. But that alone is not enough. So the new mandate begins to demand of us to do more than we did the last 20 years, if you like. So one, beyond our traditional mandate, this new arrangement requires that we regulate safety standards. What that means is that we have the opportunity, if you like, to demand more responsibility from our stakeholder institutions and be able to sanction those who fail to act in accordance with their own standards.
Let's look at the object and target of the law that establishes you. What exactly does it seek to do?
So the object one is that we must be deliberate about reducing the number of crashes and their resultant deaths and injuries.
Okay.
The law requires that we do so by promotion of road safety, by developing and coordinating road safety measures, and by also implementing and enforcing road safety standards. I said, in the past, as a commission, the object was that we should increase safety awareness, do a lot of sensitization promotion, without too much emphasis on reduction. But now, the policy objective of the law is that we must reduce these incidents. And to do so, in addition to all the things that we used to do in the past, the additional responsibility is for us to regulate road safety standards. By regulation means that we must find ways to ensure that existing institutions that have been given one responsibility or the other are implementing their own standards. The second point is that as a regulatory body, the law requires that we pay closer attention to the commercial road transport sector. For the life of this country, we haven't done as much to exert control on who comes into that space and who exits. What we do in the road environment is not any different from what happens in the airspace. But you would agree that it is not quite easy for anybody to begin to fly our airspace with an aircraft. Yep. The reverse appears to be the case, that in a road environment, it is pretty easy once you have the resources to put a vehicle on the road to provide public service. Those gaps, out of painful lessons learned over the years, requires that we must begin to look at things differently. And the new expectation, the new object and agenda requires that we must begin to pay a much closer attention to the sector. We have said again that beyond the driver and the vehicle, the road is an important element in the road safety conversation. A good road will not necessarily mean a road that is asphalted. So it could be flat, straight, but toxic, because it does not have the necessary safety facilities. There are agencies of states that have the primary responsibility to keep our roads in good condition. If you look at what we've done the last 20 years, every year we try to mirror what we call the 20 most accident-prone locations across country. But the responsibility does not rest with us to fix the roads. In the past, there were very little we could do as far as that expectation was concerned. Going forward, we are required to collaborate with the road agencies and devise procedures that will ensure that existing safety protocols that are known to all of us will be implemented with a view to minimize the risk associated with the quality of the roads. This comes with sanctions, which we were unable to impose before.
Okay.
The new expectation gives the opportunity to issue notices, issue sanctions when the need be, all with the view to try to build a certain culture where institutions will prioritize safety and voluntarily carry out their function, just so that we can begin to minimize the risk associated with use. So
the Act, does it provide framework for implementation of these standards?
Yes, so the Act requires that we should develop regulations in the form of legislative instrument.
Okay.
That's being worked on. Unfortunately, because of the sad realities of COVID, not much was able to be achieved last year. But this year, it's gone to the Attorney General's office. They've made comments on 2 occasions. And we are working very hard to ensure that when Parliament reconvenes sometime in September, we'll be able to lay the regulations to define the procedures on the way we want to proceed on these matters.
And when there are breaches, I mean, what are the provisions in the Act as to how to deal with these breaches?
Okay, so the first opportunity is for us to issue compliance notice.
Okay.
In the past, we would have written to offending institutions and try to advise that one step is taken or the other. One step or the other is taken. Now, the law requires that we issue a compliance notice. The force of it is that if you fail to act on it, there may be consequences.
Okay.
So typically, if there's a safety threat which must be remedied by an institution, the notice will indicate the threat, will indicate what must be done, advise on the time to do it, and also indicate the consequences for failing to do it. That is one. The second is that where there's a failure by an institution to carry out these directives or notices, the authority may have the choice to secure an enforcement order, which is to get the court to add its voice to ensure that the said directives are carried out for public safety reasons. But ultimately, there's opportunity for the authority to issue administrative sanctions, which may come in the form of administrative penalties, more like fines, except that they do not go to the consolidated funds, but that will go to support the authorities' activities. These are opportunities that were not in existence when we were a commission.
Okay.
And so becoming an authority, these are the new add-ons that the law creates in a bid to ensure that institutions do their work. Ultimately, from the institutional point of view, you want to see the authority as ensuring institutional compliance in addition to its public advocacy role. So taking road safety education, in fact, the law requires that in addition to what we have done in mainstreaming road safety up to basic levels, we should begin to look at secondary schools and pre-tertiary institutions. But in our dealings with our stakeholder institutions, this law provides the expectation that we must hold them accountable to their own standards so that the sort of actions that are required of them to be implemented, which are found to be beneficial to the vulnerable road user, they are implemented for public good.
Okay, and I'm happy that you talk about moving from commission to authority means, there's an additional mandate and also to improve the system. How does that act improve transport operations generally?
Yeah, so the act requires that we regulate the transport sector. So what it means is that the transport service providers are going to come under some permitting regime. In fact, they do a certain limit of it at the assembly level. So we're looking at how to collaborate with the assemblies or local government service to ensure that the operating permits that are issued, and I say this to be permits to the transport companies. They are not directed at the vehicle owners or individual drivers.
Okay.
So the STC, the Metro Mass, the GPRTU, the Atuahene and their likes would have to come under a new permitting regime, which will require that the authority takes interest in the quality of vehicles that they make available for their service, their operational plan, the quality of drivers, and their continuous education, and essentially standards that go to limit the risk of passengers. Of course, whilst these conditions have been defined, the permits are renewable, so that if you fail to act on the terms of your permit at the point of renewal, there may be consequences for you.
Okay.
We think that kind of arrangement, which exists in almost every country that do not often have this discussion, must be replicated. But we must do so in ways that do not create too much discomfort, but must be done nonetheless.
What has been your challenge in dealing with offending institutions over the period, and how will this new law help in filling the loopholes?
I'll give you a typical example. I think one of the sad reality of present is what happened on the N1, for instance. So when the N1 was being constructed, there's what we call a road safety audit, which is an opportunity to review the design and make appropriate recommendations.
Okay.
For many other road infrastructure work, for instance. In the past, when these recommendations are made, they come in the form of an advice. And advice may well be taken or not. And oftentimes, not all the time, oftentimes most of these advice have not yielded the necessary consequences from action, if you like, from the relevant institutions. And the issue of the N1 is clearly there for us to see that in many cases we've had to come back to take rather late remedial actions that could have well been avoided at the point of inception. What this arrangement does is that when the authority issues a notice or a directive, which is based on what an institution ought to have or to do naturally,
Okay.
and there's a failure to do it, the law empowers the authority to ensure that it is done. So not more like an advice.
Okay.
In the past, it was more like an advisory agency. But as a regulatory institution, what must be done within the context of the law, we must find ways to ensure that it is done for public good.
Okay. So with this new thing, it also means that you have additional mandates and also to ensure a better road safety situation in our country. Do you have what it takes?
Yeah, well, Rome wasn't built in a day. We've been asking for this for close to about 10 years. Yes, I think at present we have sufficient capacity to begin to implement the new expectation. The law provides that we set up a new directorate in charge of responsible for regulation, inspections, and compliance, which has been done. The law requires that we appoint some road safety inspectors, and last year we did appoint about 100 of them across country. They have been trained. We are continuously giving them some level of training. So gradually, we are beginning to build a capacity to respond to these new expectations. From the beginning, we do not expect to be fully ready from a go.
But do you have a plan?
Yes, we do.
Okay, what's the plan?
The plan is that we've set up a new directorate. As I've said, we have employed about 100 inspectors. The entire body of the authority, human resources, are beginning to go through some level of training to align with this new expectation. We have plans to roll out the legislative instrument. Hopefully, if it should come to stream by the end of the year, to add up to the new demands. We are harmonizing existing standards into a single document that will be referable for all of our stakeholder institutions and gradually carry out a lot of sensitization. In fact, between last year and this year, what we have tried to do is to bring as many of our stakeholders together. We haven't as yet begin to exact the level of control that the law requires of us, but we think for starters, those that would be hit, if you like, by the law, to be fair, must begin to appreciate what is required of our relationship. So that when the other needs come to stream, the LI, the standards manual, staff sufficiently trained, from next year, hopefully, the authority, the public will begin to see a new look of the authority.
Mr. Atuahene, I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. He is the head of regulations, inspection, and compliance at the National Road Safety Authority.